Today I will be telling you an animal fable of the owl and the moon. Come join me. Hi everyone, my name is Heidi. I'm a Malaysian author and welcome back. Today I will be telling you an animal fable. This time it's a story which tries to explain why the owl is a nocturnal animal and why it always seems to be hooting and pining for the moon. Now there's a Malay saying of bagai Pungguk rindukan bulan, which literally means it's as if the owl misses the moon. So apparently owls come out at night and they seem to be in a habit of like perching on a tree and looking at the moon, looking at it as if they really miss it and they love the moon and they pine for the moon. I haven't personally seen this except on TV, but it seems that this behavior of the owl has spawned many animal tales which try to explain why the owl looks at the moon in this certain way. So it's quite interesting. There are quite a few owl and moon stories like this. So today I'm going to be telling you two different versions of this story. Very, very different versions. I'd love to know which version you prefer, so do let me know at the end. I'm excited to tell you the story, so sit back, relax, and chill while I tell you these two different versions of the owl and the moon. Once upon a time, Putera Pungguk, or the Owl Prince, lived on the moon in a magnificent palace with his family. He had a beautiful royal garden full of trees and flowers. One day, the prince couldn't sleep, so he decided to go for a walk in his garden, and that's when he bumped into a beautiful girl. Her name was Puteri Bulan, or Princess of the Moon. The two became friends and then they fell in love with each other, and they loved to take long walks in the palace gardens to look down upon the earth. Now, at that time, Earth was this dark, mysterious, unexplored planet. No one had ever gone down to Earth before, so they didn't know what it was like down there. But one night, Puteri Bulan saw a beautiful flower, a silver flower with golden sparkles. And she said to the Owl Prince that she really wanted to see that flower. And she became obsessed with this flower, so much so that Putera Pungguk, the Owl Prince, decided that he was going to fly down to Earth to get this flower for her because he was so in love with her. When the prince told his father, the father said, no, you cannot go down to Earth because once we fly down to Earth, our bodies will change and we might not be able to fly back up to the moon. But Putera Pungguk was adamant. He wanted to get this flower for the princess. So he said goodbye to the princess. He said to her, I will find you the flower because I love you so much. And she said to him, I'll wait for you forever, however long it takes. So the two lovers said a very tearful goodbye, and Putera Pungguk flew down from the moon and headed towards Earth. Now, as he was flying down to Earth, he discovered that his body was starting to change. It became smaller, and the skin on his body turned into feathers, and his arms turned into wings. Now, when he arrived in Earth, there was nothing there, but he flew around to search for this special flower, but he couldn't find it. He found all different types of other flowers of other different colors and shapes, but he couldn't find the flower that his Puteri Bulan wanted. And this continued for years and years and years until finally, when he tried to go back up to the moon, he just couldn't. He wasn't able to. He had turned into an owl. And this is why the owl, or the Pungguk, sits on the branch at night and looks at the moon, because the owl misses the moon. The end. So this is the first version of the story. Let me now tell you a very different version. A long time ago, Puok, or owl, forced the moon to marry him because he loved her so. Now the moon wasn't very happy with this. She didn't want to marry Puok, the owl, because he had a funny face. He had big, huge eyes, which were right in front of his face. And she just didn't want to marry him. She wasn't in love with him. So she started to think of a way to escape. One day, she removed her comb and she threw it down to Earth. Now, Earth at this time was a mysterious, unexplored planet. No one had ever been down there before. Moon started to cry. Owl was very worried and he asked her, "What's wrong, my love? What can I do? Please stop crying. I'll do anything for you." And Moon told him that she had dropped her comb and it had fallen down to Earth. And Owl, he didn't really want to go down to Earth, but this was his one true love. This was his wife, and he would do anything for her. So he said to her, "If you can make me a long rope, I can climb down to Earth and find the comb, and then you can pull me back up again." And she said, "Okay, I'll do that." Moon used her magical powers and wished for the bark of a tree that the Idahans called balo. And when she got this bark, she began to make a long rope that stretched all the way from the moon down to Earth. And when it was ready, Puok, or Owl, began to climb down the rope. When he reached Earth, by some miracle, he found her comb just there on the ground. Owl grabbed the comb and called up the moon. He asked her to pull him up again. But what did Moon do? Did she pull him up? No, she simply let go of the rope, thus stranding Owl on Earth. And this is why, till this day, Owl calls out to the moon every time she appears in the sky. The end. Pungguk means owl in Malay, and Puok actually means owl as well, but in the Kadazan-Dusun language. The Kadazan people are the major ethnic group in Sabah in East Malaysia. So both stories seem to take place at a time when there was life on the moon, when people could live there or beings could live there, and you could actually grow things there, flowers and plants. And we are also told that Earth at the time was this dark, mysterious place that is uninhabited and unexplored. In the first story, we don't actually know whether Putera Pungguk is in human form, but it appears that once he descended to Earth, his body transformed into an owl. So both of these stories seek to explain why the owl is a nocturnal animal, why it only comes out at night, and why it seems to hoot and pine for the moon. However, even though the ending of these two stories are the same, the tone of these two stories are completely different. A tone of the story indicates a particular feeling that you get when you read or when you hear a story. The writer or the storyteller has the power to convey a certain feeling. So she can make that story feel sad or whimsical, joyful, suspenseful, frightening. She has that power. And they can do this by using certain words and phrases to convey that meaning, or by focusing on the point of view of certain characters to get that sort of tone, that feeling across. So in the second story, it's told from the point of view of the moon. So we can see her point of view. We can see that she's not happy with this marriage. She doesn't want to be forced into this marriage. And the tone of that story comes out loud and clear. This is really interesting because oral folk tales like this, they are passed by word of mouth. So it really depends on the mood and the life experiences of the storyteller. If the storyteller is a happy, joyful person, then chances are her stories will be like that, will convey this happiness. However, if the storyteller is older and she's a bit more cynical, she knows what's what, she knows about the realities of life, then her stories might be a bit different. It might be a bit more cynical, more realistic. It might be more cautionary because, she's been there and she wants to pass on this knowledge to the younger generation, to warn them. So as you can probably tell, the first story is framed as a tender but tragic love story. We are told that the love between the moon and the owl is mutual. Owl loves the moon so much that he's willing to risk his life to find this flower for her. At the end of this tale, you might be left with a feeling of sadness, but also regret at a love lost. But you might also marvel at this great romance. Now, the second story is totally different. The ending is the same, but you are left with a totally different kind of feeling. It might make you chuckle, giggle. And you might think, yes, this is more like it. I can see this happening. I found the second story in this book, Animal Tales of Sabah by P.S. Shim. It was published by the Natural History publication Borneo in 2002. The author in this book worked with the Forestry Department and then with the Worldwide Fund for Nature and traveled around Sabah collecting these oral tales from the locals. So this particular story was narrated by someone called Lias B. Parapa. Now we don't know who this person is and how they heard the story. There is a possibility that the story started off as a tender love story, but somewhere along the line, a storyteller put their own spin to it. Perhaps this person was in a one-sided relationship and recognized the abusive and obsessive signs in the story. You know, forcing someone to marry you is quite abusive. And perhaps they wanted to highlight this aspect. So this is a great example of how folk tales can move and adapt to suit the needs of a particular society. In every tale, there is an alternative point of view, another way of interpreting the story. This is what's so interesting about fairy tales and folk tales, because clearly the narrator of the second story had an alternative view of the story. Perhaps they had another type of experience in love, and this was what they wanted to convey in their story. So what did you think of these two different versions of The Owl and the Moon? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know which one you prefer. If you like this story and the other stories I've told on this channel, please do like and subscribe to my channel. It would really help me get these videos out there. Thank you for watching, but don't go just yet. Check out my other animal fable in episode 21, which is a story of Cunning Cat and the Two Silly Monkeys. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.